Hi everyone, this is Olga from Eagle, and today again I welcome you into my Berkeley kitchen, except for this video is going to be a really special one. Today I'm not going to be the star of the video. The star is going to be my amazing husband Doug.
Hello.
Doug is the cook in the family and he makes most of our meals. I just help him cook. And another amazing thing about Doug is that he lived in Russia with me for 10 years, and during his time in Russia, he learned to make all sorts of different Russian recipes. So now that we are in the US and our kitty is here with us, as you can see, now that we are in the US, whenever I feel like having some Russian food, Doug is the one who makes it for me. And what are we making today?
Today we're making borscht. It is a beet and cabbage soup. Those are the two things that you have to have, and then there's a lot of other optional ingredients, and we'll be showing you how we're going to make it today.
Awesome. And what is the recipe that we use?
I'm going to modify a Bon Appetit recipe that I found online. That recipe is really basic, so I think it hits a lot of like the main notes, but I have some variations on it for the style that we like it. Alright, so we have our ingredients for the borscht laid out here. A couple things to mention. So number one, I said this is a cabbage and beet soup. See, these are our two main ingredients. Probably the two main discussed ingredients about variations on this is whether or not to include beef and whether or not to include potatoes. We're going to include both today. Other variations of borscht have kidney beans in them, or more or less beets, more or less cabbage. So it's really a recipe you can play with. There's no one definitive recipe. A couple things I wanted to mention. The recipe calls for 4 large beets. We've at least doubled that amount. I like a really beety borscht. These are pre-roasted and peeled. We did that a little bit earlier. Beets are really hard to work with. They're very messy, so if you're going to do that, make sure you wear plastic gloves. Or you can, at some grocery stores, you can find pre-cooked and pre-peeled beets, which are a lot easier to work with. The other variations we have, got 8 cups of broth. We're going to make some more. We've got some beef bones here that we're going to use with our stock. We're also going to cook in with the meat. That piece of meat is over 2 pounds. The recipe calls for about 1 pound. We're not going to use it all, but we're definitely going to use more than a pound. We're going to make a really nice, thick, almost stewy borscht. And everything else is about the same in the recipe. We have only 2 carrots, but they're enormous. And finally, we're going to add some garlic as well. Probably about 4 cloves of garlic to the soup. All right, so we will see you after we have broken all this stuff down, and get ready to cook.
So when grating beets, I recommend you to use plastic gloves. Otherwise, your hands are going to be super purple.
All right, we are back. Right now we are working on our broth and our beef. So in here we have our beef bones and our onions, and then our diced chuck. It's about a medium dice in there. And we're letting that's 4 cups of broth and 2 cups of water is what we ended up using. So that is starting to break down in there. We're getting our broth going. Take a look at that. And then you're just going to want to keep sort of skimming off that foam that's forming on the top, but we'll get some of the fat off after it cools. And then over here we have broken down our vegetables. So I have a medium dice on the potatoes, and then we just use a grater, as you saw, for the carrots and the beets, and then chopped the cabbage. So those are the 4 vegetables that have been broken down. Now we just gotta wait about another hour while this continues to simmer. These are ready to go. So once we can get this cooked and then cooled and then skimmed, we'll be able to go on to the next step. So we are reintroducing the meat back into our pot. And our broth, I'm going to leave the bones in for a little bit more. I think they've got a little bit more to give. But they're completely trimmed, it's just bone. And we've got our skimmed broth. Just going to go back in. And now we're going to put the soup together. And we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. We've got our last 4 cups of broth. And then our vegetables. There we go, all set. We're gonna hold off on the cabbage for now, that'll go in a little bit later. All right, one last thing that this recipe did not include that I forgot about until just now is the tomato paste. So this is when you're gonna wanna introduce that as well. I'd say eyeball it about 1/4 cup. Alright, we're now going to prepare some dill and garlic that's going to go in the soup when we put the cabbage in. So with the dill, you do not need to pull the leaves off. These stems taste great too, and if you cut it finely, you won't even notice that they're there in the soup. So I just like to give it a nice little fold in half. And then to work down. I will go maybe all the way down, might leave a little bit of the stems off at the very bottom where there's no leaves. So right about there, pull some of this out, and then chop this up a little bit finer.
Smells amazing.
All right, bones are out, and just added the cabbage, dill, and garlic. We're going to do about a half an hour. Simmer before. We're probably going to do another 20 minutes or so, and then we'll taste. And we have still the vinegar has to go in, and we need to season it. I said before this is a cabbage and beet soup, but I think the one ingredient that you absolutely need as well is the dill. Okay, if you're going to make it authentic Russian, there has to be dill and there has to be a lot. So you can see some of it here floating, but we're going to add more, and then we're going to garnish with dill as well. Add a dollop of sour cream. And a dill garnish.